Thursday, everybody. Thirsty Thursday. Chris Meaney here with you. You're watching another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN right here on a Game Plus Network. Always appreciate you guys hanging out. If it is live on our FTN Network YouTube page, you see Adam Rentkamp in the house as well. If you can please smash the like button, greatly appreciated. If you don't want to watch my mug, look at my mug, and I don't blame you. This show also available on iTunes and Spotify. And if you could rate, review, subscribe, it would do us an absolute solid, as we are going to say goodbye to the NFC today. Yesterday, we officially wrapped up all the NFC teams. We previewed most of them at length, talked about their fantasy football weapons, so we were switching gears, and we're heading over to, let's be honest, the better conference in the NFL. It is the AFC conference, and we're starting with one of the weakest divisions in the NFL, actually, and me saying that the AFC is much better than the NFC is not a lie, but the AFC South is not great. It's not great at all. I know Jake Seeley and myself, on his show All in Football, also being caught on Game Plus Network and here on FGN Network YouTube page. He has this like spinning wheel. It's like a roulette wheel of fun, he calls it, where he just spins the wheel and whatever team pops up, we talk about it. And I think he's gone through over half the league and really no traction when it comes to the AFC South. So he's not finishing strong, and we're not starting strong here in the AFC. But I think we're starting with the best team in the AFC South, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. Last year, they were well on their way to making the playoffs as a wild card team at least, and then they collapsed down the stretch, courtesy of Carson Wentz, who's no longer in town. They missed the playoffs, and one of the most surprising losses last season on the NFL schedule was the final week of the season, week 18, where the Colts went into Jacksonville and could not find a way to win that football game. And then, like I said, Carson Wentz completely gone. But a lot to talk about from this squad. Michael Pittman. We're all fans of Michael Pittman on this show. We were fans of Michael Pittman last year. We were on that breakout last year. There's a lot of things that we get wrong here in this industry, but that's one certainly we did not have wrong over at FTN or on this show. Michael Pittman was one of my favorite players throughout the entire NFL season as well. His catch prop, most times, believe it or not, was like 4.5 plus money. 4.5 plus money. He was starting to get into a bit of a groove towards the end of the season, and he was like 5.5 plus money, right around 40.5, 48.5 yards. I went back and looked at some of the props from him, and Vegas was not giving him any respect. I'm certain they will this season. I think he could, it's a long shot, but I think he can come like top 5 in receiving yards this year. Like, he had 1,000 yards last year. Everyone's looking for the breakout. How much better can it get? I suppose it can get a little bit better. There's an upgrade at the quarterback position, no longer Carson Wentz. It is Matt Ryan, but this team's still pretty thin at the wide receiver position, at the tight end position, even though they did draft some tight ends and some wide receivers. But Jonathan Taylor is the key to this offense, and he is, on average, the consensus #1 pick in fantasy football. Should he be? Not going to make any cases for him not to be. I did see Trey Turner on with our girl, Jem Piacenti, fan of the show, who's going to join us next week on Mean Streets over at Sports Illustrated. She interviewed Trey Turner, who plays a little fantasy football himself, not with Mike Trout, Alex Bregman, and Jock Peterson and the guys, but his own little fantasy football squad, a Dodgers-related fantasy football league. And he said it was the safe pick, Taylor, at 1, but he doesn't want it. He doesn't want #1 overall. And I agree. Those hanging out with us here today, anybody here believe or anybody want the first overall pick? If you had the choice, do you want it? Jonathan Taylor, is that something that you want as well? We got a lot here to talk about on this show, not just the Colts. We're going to continue NFFC high stakes leagues. We're into round 12 now. There's a lot of appealing names here. Yesterday, round 11, there wasn't really a lot of appealing names for me. I didn't like it. Did go with Justin Fields. I like a couple names here. And if you've been hanging out with me throughout the entire offseason here, or just here and there and listening to me ramble about certain targets, you will know as soon as you see the board for those going in round 12 of NFFC high stakes leagues over the past few weeks, who my target will be. So we'll talk about that. Tom Brady's got himself a new tight end. Matthew Tkachuk wants out of town. Nino Niederreiter just found himself a new team. We'll touch on all that in a little bit. The second half of the MLB season gets underway today. Lots of games happening here this afternoon, so make sure you set those lineups accordingly. There's only a couple late night games, and the Astros and the Yankees have a doubleheader happening. Detroit and Oakland has a doubleheader happening. Our guy Kyle Murray has MLB props for you right now. Head on over to our FTN Network YouTube page. The Prize Picks Prop Show. He dove into, I think, 3, maybe 4 props that he likes here for this afternoon. So get on it now. an opportunity. I'm not really going to talk about any afternoon games happening because it's really just happening here shortly. And this show, by the time you're watching on Game Plus, it's already happening. So I can either look like a big loser or really smart. I will say I like Christian Javier. Every time he takes the bump, I like him. I know it's against the Yankees, 6.5. I saw him around -130. I would lock that one in. I do like that prop quite a bit. But we'll dive into the late game between the Giants and the Dodgers. And we'll also look at World Series props because we didn't get an opportunity to do that as well. And we'll have some fun towards the end of the show. We'll take a look at the ESPYs, which took place last night. Daily Handle in the house. Did you have any bets there on the ESPYs last night? It was a big day for Shohei Ohtani. It was a big day for Stephen Curry, and believe it or not, Austin Matthews did not win Best Player in the NHL. My goodness, what happens when the Toronto media doesn't vote for? I'm kidding. Daily Handle breaking news: Georgia Bulldogs head football coach, Kirby Smart, reportedly accepted a new 10-year contract with the program, $112.5 million per ESPN senior writer Chris Lowe. Well deserved for sure. I do like that move as well. Mug isn't so bad, Meaney. Joshua Frick, my guy. Do appreciate you, dude. Got a Titans fan here. Take it easy. Okay. I'm not writing them off. In fact, if we're looking for some value here on this squad, division odds, we'll dive into it when we get into the Colts. I think there's an opportunity. Of course, they were the cream of the crop last year. What did they have? 12-5 last year, I do believe, for the Titans, right? They had some big games last season. One that stands out to me is the W that they had at the end against the Bills. Actually beat a lot of good teams last year, right, Joshua? They did beat some really good teams last year. 12-5, of course. No A.J. Brown. They were strong last year, 7-2. The Colts I just thought that they really had a big collapse there. I like this Colts team. I like their defense. I like the offensive line. I love Darius Leonard. You're playing IDP leagues. I know a lot of people out there don't play IDP leagues, but if you are, like, this guy is the first one off the board, and that's not really how I like. I'm in IDP leagues, but they're keeper leagues or dynasty leagues. You're not really drafting from scratch, but if you are drafting, for the most part, he's going to be the first guy off the board. I wouldn't do it. I'd love to have him on the squad. But still, like, when people are getting a defensive player in around round 8 to 12, I just still would rather stock up on some high upside backs or wide receivers, get myself a second quarterback, or look for a tight end, as we were going to talk round 12 here today as well. I do want to give you guys a shout out to everyone here, though, that is hanging out. I mean, Daily Handle's just giving us news. Wow, you like 3 breaking news items here from Daily Handle. Like, we appreciate you, dude. What we got here? The 76ers plan to build a $1.3 billion funded arena, Center City. Okay, at the current, all right, Fashion District, Philadelphia, Philly. Always a great time. Love the link. Love the setup at Xfinity. Citizens Bank is right there, and then you got Wells Fargo, a nice little setup there. And then Kyler Murray at Arizona. It's happened. It's finally happened. He has agreed to a 5-year extension. I feel like this is what Arizona was going to do the entire time. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, are they going to spend up on the quarterback, just re-enter the draft? Like, it's a weird franchise, like, just thinking like maybe they would let him go. They didn't want to spend all that money because last year was a bit, towards the end of last year, they started off so strong, but, Hopkins suffered that injury. They were 3-4 without Hopkins, and they got crushed in the playoffs. But Kyler suffered a couple injuries in each of the last 2 seasons towards the end, particularly a couple years ago when he suffered that shoulder injury, and then he stopped running around. But he's still a really good quarterback, and, of course, like, he had the option to go with the Oakland Athletics in Major League Baseball or here with the NFL. So I'm happy to see that. Daily Handle says he did not bet on that. Really interested in the ESPYs. No, don't blame you, dude. But yesterday's a weird day for people who, weren't making any bets. Adam Reinkamp in the house. Really interested in Pablo Lopez under 17.5 outs recorded, bullpen fully rested, and Pablo has hit that number only once in his last game. Okay, Pablo Lopez. I like it. That's an early game this afternoon as well. Good stuff, guys. Appreciate it. And that's a good point from Joshua Frick as well. 12-5 for the Titans, and their key hog in the offense, Derrick Henry, one of the best we've seen over the past few years. Averaged like 30-something carries last year and continued after everyone was saying, nah, he's going to fall off. And then what you're saying, he broke his foot. He kind of fell off. He didn't really fall off. He looked even better before that foot injury, and he came back not 100%, and still in a playoff game, I do believe got the rock quite a bit. Could be a long year, though, for the Titans. Could be a long year. We'll see. We'll talk about that division, mostly about the Colts. We got a lot to get to here. We're going to start in this next block with Tom Brady's new tight end. That's right. The Bucs signed a tight end last night. Do you care? We'll find out next year on Mean Streets. Keep her locked. Welcome back in. So I got the numbers here for the Kyler Murray extension. It's not cheap, right? 230.5 according to Insider Daily Handle here. Okay, all right. Paid him up. 160 million guaranteed. Okay, big move for Arizona. They locked up their guy. We'll see. I think we talked about Arizona. Actually, we haven't talked about Arizona. We will get to that division. It's clearly one of the most intriguing divisions in sports. It's going to be absolutely amazing to watch those four teams. Actually, no, I was thinking about the AFC because the AFC is on my mind. We did already touch on Arizona. I was thinking about the AFC West, the NFC West. It's okay, right? Seattle took a little bit of a step back, but Arizona got the Super Bowl defending champs in there, and the Rams in San Fran. We'll see what they do, with Jimmy Garoppolo, who, according to reports now, seeking trades. We'll see where he does land for sure, but a lot of money there for Kyler Murray for sure. Absolutely a ton there. 3 teams in the Seahawks, you mean? Yes, Joshua. 3 teams in the Seattle Seahawks. Their win totals are like 5.5. I don't know. I think they win like 3 games. I don't think they win too much. And I know DK is sitting there telling people that he's not concerned at all with the quarterback play, but he has to be a little bit concerned with the quarterback play. So Tom Brady last night, we mentioned it. The tight end that they signed is Kyle Rudolph, and Joshua had the joke in there. I agree. Did the Bucs really sign a tight end, or is it just a lightweight offensive lineman? Kyle Rudolph, it's been a long time since we've seen this guy really be productive. I think he can go back to the 2015, 2016. He had back-to-back strong seasons. Yeah, looking here, he had a really strong season in 2016. He had 132 targets, 83 grabs, 7 touchdowns. The following year in 2017, he had 8 touchdowns, 532 yards. He had, in that time with the Vikings, he was a big red zone target. That's where a lot of his work happened, with some of these tight ends, when they were racking up touchdowns. He also had a 9-touchdown campaign in 2012, but he hasn't really done anything in the last 2 seasons, especially with the Giants last year. I know a lot of people are getting pretty excited about him with the Giants last year, but he didn't really do anything. He had 13 games played. He had 39 targets, 26 grabs, 257 yards, got 2 touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons. It's to me, there's a couple things. I still feel like if, this team is we're getting close to week 1 of the NFL season, or potentially the Bucs are off to a really good start, which I expect them to, that phone call still could happen to Gronk from Brady. Do you want to come And then it's a wash. Like Rudolph doesn't matter. Cameron Brate doesn't matter. I drafted a couple guys, doesn't matter. Kate Otten is one guy that they drafted. Right now, it seems like a bloody mess. I'm not in on Rudolph. I don't think anybody should be in on Rudolph. Drafting him best ball, taking him late, 2 tight end premium. I don't think so. I still think personally Cameron Brate will be the guy that plays the most snaps among tight ends. We talked about his red zone usage a lot on this show, more red zone targets last year than Gronk. I still think he's the guy, but there's just a lot of different pieces, and it's probably just like whatever now, right? For those that have drafted Cameron Brate over the last week or so, maybe drafted him as like a top 15 tight end, because that's roughly where I had him. I believe in Cameron Brate. But now just the addition of Rudolph, not that I'm crazy about Rudolph, but, he can block. He can be an option for Brady inside the red zone. He could just get in the way that I just won't have Cameron Brate ranked as a top 15 tight end anymore. I'll probably just bump him down. And, if I'm waiting it out, probably waiting. I'd rather Njoku, maybe Gerald Everett, right? I mean, say what you want about Cook, but he had moments inside this Chargers offense. Chargers offense pretty good. It's not like they brought in any other weapons. It's, it's Eckler to the backfield. It's Keenan Allen. It's Mike Williams. And after that, I think we'll see a step forward from Joshua Palmer, Canadian boy. I think we'll certainly see that, like him over Guyton. But after that, like Gerald Everett, I think will have a bit of a role. So he's a guy that you could just take towards the end as well. Credible source told me that Gronk will come back at some point during the season. I mean, his girlfriend you could say his girlfriend's a credible source. It just didn't really believe that he was actually retiring, and that she wouldn't be shocked if Brady called and he picked up the phone and he would go. So we'll see. As of right now, I think the Bucks believe that Gronk is gone, so that's why they wouldn't bring him in if that was the case. Other news items here. We'll switch over to the NHL. There's some NHL stuff here. The biggest thing is Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk, just what has happened to the Calgary Flames here over the past couple weeks. I mean, this team had high expectations into the playoffs. Of course, they got bounced by their arch rivals. The Battle of Alberta, Edmonton took care of them pretty easily in the second round. But everything that's happened to them over the past couple weeks, you really do have to feel for them. Johnny Hockey leaves the squad, doesn't want to sign with them after a career year, 100-plus points, the most points, 5-5 out of anybody in the NHL. And then Matthew Tkachuk, who was a 40-goal campaign, over 100 points as well. I think he had 42 goals, a terrific season, a really, really strong hockey player. He's one of those guys that I love in fantasy hockey. He's one of those guys that you play in bangers leagues, you target in bangers leagues. He touches all categories. He hits, he can fight, he takes penalties, he loves to shoot the puck. Clearly he's a goal scorer. And he just, like I said, he had a 100-point campaign. So that was one of, if not the best 5-5 line in the NHL last season between those two, Tkachuk, Johnny Hockey, and Elias Lindholm. And now they're going to lose 2 of the 3. So multiple reports here. This was from The Athletic, this one here, but it's across the board that a trade will most likely go down within a week. It's going to happen here pretty quickly. He's a restricted free agent, RFA. Is it going to be a sign and trade? It potentially is going to be a sign and trade. Maybe the Flames find a way to get a partner, lock him up for the 8-year, and then flip him. They're in a really tough spot. I mean, when these players demand trades, it's like, what kind of return can you get? Like the Habs and Jeff Petrie, they just flipped him to Pittsburgh. Mike Matheson, I think that was pretty solid considering everybody knew the Habs wanted to trade Jeff Petrie, wanted to trade, that contract away. And with Tkachuk, everybody knows, but at the same time, he's still a really, really strong player. It's a bad spot for a GM. It's just really tough. So there's some reported teams out there, and then there was reports after that those teams were false. So I'm not going to speculate here. I'll give you a few teams that I think he could go to. I think he can go to Florida. I think he can go to St. Louis. I believe he's from the area. I think the Blues really want him. I think if you're Calgary, you want to start conversations with maybe a Jordan Kyrou, some prospects that are in their system. Yes, you'd want some NHL-ready guys, but a team that wants to get a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, like St. Louis, they probably don't want to part with a Kyrou, right? They want Kyrou to be part of that future and build something consistently there. Same thing in Florida. You probably don't want to give too many roster spots away. Man, if you're the Panthers, you're probably kicking yourself right now. You traded Owen Tippett away for Claude Giroux, and you got a month of Claude Giroux. You were bounced in the second round. You were swept by the Bolts, and then Claude Giroux walked. You gave a really strong player away in Tippett. I think if they could go back, they would trade Tippett for a guy that they could have under control for a few years in Matthew Tkachuk. But what's the deal here with Calgary? What's this? I mean, these Canadian markets are behind the 8 ball here now. I mean, taxes is an issue. Reports, and I don't believe all of this is true, but I'm sure taxes is part of it. I lived in Alberta for quite some time. I think it's fine. I think it's a great city. I spent some time in Calgary. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, it gets cold. It gets absolutely cold. Not going to lie. It does get cold. Taxes, I'm sure, is an issue for some of these players. Reports of a fourth or fifth lockdown happening maybe in the winter. I'm sure Johnny Hockey leaving didn't sit well with Matthew Tkachuk either. He could see potentially the rebuild happening there as well, but no Canadian teams on his list. It's really tough for some of these Canadian cities to acquire free agents because of the taxes, right? And, go to Vegas, taxes, Florida, Tampa, Dallas. It's beneficial for some of these players, but a huge loss. And no matter who gets him, they will get a fantastic player, Matthew Tkachuk, on his way out. So we'll keep an eye on all that. But stock down for everybody in Calgary. Elias Lindholm, Rasmus Anderson, Noah Hannafin. The power play is not going to be as deep. Maybe stock up for Andrew Mangiapane, who's just like going to probably play on that first line with Elias Lindholm. Man, tough go for the Flames. I really do feel for them. Nino Niederreiter is the other piece of news item here, who signed a 2-year deal this morning with the Nashville Predators. He's a 6-time 20-goal scorer, 24 goals last year, 44 points. He had 20 goals in each of his last 2 seasons. And in fact, I believe the 44 points are the most points he's had since, 2016-17 with the Minnesota Wild. So just added some more offensive firepower to Nashville, something that they certainly needed. They were able to bring back their guy, Philip Forsberg, which our guy, Eric Young, is probably ecstatic about. I know that he is. He thought that he had one foot out the door. So you add Nino Niederreiter inside that top 6 with the Forsberg, with the Duchesne, Ryan Johansson. So they're starting to build a little bit something there. They also acquired Ryan McDonough, who is on the decline, but will add, I think he's got 1 or 2 solid years left. But man, did he ever look slow in the Stanley Cup playoffs, especially in the finals against the Colorado Avalanche, who have a ton of speed and they could, make a lot of players, defensemen, look pretty slow. Adam Reitkamp, still in the house. If you're hanging out, I know you're a Blues guy. I would love to hear what you are willing to give up for a guy like Matthew Tkachuk. Maybe some of those prospects that the Blues do have inside the organization would have to go the other way. But I would narrow it down to, I wouldn't even count Vegas out. They do weird things. They just traded Pacioretty away for nothing. I wouldn't count Vegas out, but I would say St. Louis and Florida and New Jersey. I would say those are the 3 teams where we could see him go to. We are going to say goodbye to the hockey talk for now. Oh, the other news item was just James Harden. He signed a contract with Philly. He's going to be back with the 76ers. I think we knew that would eventually happen for him and Philadelphia. We will say goodbye to all the news items. We are going to turn our attention to the Indianapolis Colts. We'll take a look at them from a fantasy standpoint. We'll run through their schedule. They are the favorites to win the AFC South. Maybe we'll touch a little bit on Joshua Frick's Titans as well. Don't go anywhere. Lots to get to here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back in. So we touched on Kyler in the last block here, but I believe our, just our team. I mean, they're so strong with George and Tyler. I believe we do have a Kyler board. Is this correct? We have Kyler. Look at these guys. Kyler Murray. So here it is. Arizona Cardinals, 6 years, $280 million, $46.67 million per year. My goodness, 155 million total guarantee. Okay, giddy up. That's pretty good. What is that in terms of like quarterback money per year? I can find this out on the fly if we do care about that sort of stuff. I believe that's up there, right? Like Dak makes what, 40 million per year. Can we bring that board up one more time? What was that? 46.1, 46.67 per year. Okay. So Rodgers is one, right? With 50. I got it here now. Rodgers is 50. Watson's 46. Cleveland, right? Mahomes 45. Josh Allen 43. Derek Carr 40. Matthew Stafford 40. So he's in at 46.6. He's now the second highest paid average per year. Okay, Kyler getting paid. And this is just what's happened over the years, right? Remember when Jimmy Garoppolo signed that big one and was 27, and then Cousins signed that one. It's just the trend in sports and with quarterbacks. So good for Arizona. Show me the money. Yes, show me the money. It's good for Arizona. I got a couple Kyler stats here that I had jotted down. I just didn't remember them off the top of my head. So I'll just kind of share them with you since we're on Kyler, and then we'll switch gears to the Colts. I really like Kyler. I'm a sucker for him. I got the Funko Pop. I mean, I have him in a couple Dynasty leagues. I love the way that he plays. I love the way that he jukes. He's just so smooth inside the red zone. He is just phenomenal. I hope that he can stay healthy. He didn't really run as much last year as he did the year before. And, as a rookie, it's that they've kind of scaled back a little bit. Maybe that's protecting him. Maybe that's part of the injuries that's happened as well. But QB 10 last year, fourth in fantasy points per game, ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Completion percentage of 64% as a rookie, 67% as a sophomore, and 69%, oh so nice, last year. So he's made progressions in each of the last couple years, but last year a career low 88 rushing attempts. He only had 423 rushing yards after having 819 in 2020. So that's a significant drop off, and that's part of why you like the upside, right? You certainly do, the arm strength and having Hopkins, even though he's suspended. We'll get to him in a little bit. Bringing his old buddy Hollywood Brown, which I'm totally in on that. Marquise Brown, I'm drinking that Kool-Aid. I think that these guys are going to have a rapport. I'm very interested in Marquise Brown. I like that stack too, those two. And if you get Ertz a little bit later on, Rondell Moore, I think in best ball, it's a stack that could pay off. Up-tempo offense. Kingsbury, hit or miss. He's done some weird things over the last 2 years, but I still believe in him overall as a play caller. There's certainly some upside in this offense, but you want Kyler to run. That's why you're drafting him really as a quarterback that early. You want to have that rushing upside. So from him to go to 819 to 423, it's significant. It's cut in half. It's absolutely crazy. Missing 3 games didn't help, of course, but he only had 1 game with double-digit rushing attempts in 2021. He had 6 games with double-digit rushing attempts in 2020. Again, part of that could have been the shoulder, because 2 years ago, he was among the leaders in red zone rushing attempts, and Kenyon Drake didn't have anything. Then he suffered that injury, and then Kenyon Drake in the last second half of the season was inside the top 4 in red zone rushing attempts. So all those red zone rushing attempts that Kyler was running in himself, from the 1, from the 5, from the 7, it was eventually going to Kenyon Drake. And then we saw a lot of that with James Conner. James Conner, I think he had 18 total touchdowns last year, 15 rushing, only behind Jonathan Taylor, who we'll get to here in a minute. Wasn't really efficient between the tackles. I think like 3.7 yards per carry, but he was the goal line back in a good offense, and he was racking up some touchdowns, and really saved him from a fantasy standpoint. But for where Kyler's going, I'm not totally in on him. There was just you could really see the drop off without Hopkins, and that was part of it. I think there's an upgrade. There's certainly an upgrade from Christian Kirk to Hollywood. I do believe that. But here's the latest on where's Kyler is going. I think he's like quarterback 8. I got a lot of numbers in my head, so I just got to, you need to give it to quarterback 6 over the last 6 weeks, over the last month. Things change pretty quickly. He's still quarterback 6. It's a little rich for me. I probably won't have a lot of shares of Allen, Herbert, Mahomes. I probably won't have any shares of Mahomes. Joe Burrow, I like. Man, Joe Burrow's really jumped up. Quarterback 4. 2 months ago, he was like quarterback 8 or 9 on average. I like Burrow too, but this is steep, like a min pick of 15 for Joe Burrow. It's just not the way that I typically like to run. Now, part of the min pick may be super flex. If you're going super flex, I do like to get a top 10 quarterback, or if it's just going crazy, like the first 7 or 8 come off the board in the first 10 picks, and you can just zig the other way or zag the other way and get somebody maybe in that 8 to 15 range. Talked a lot about Lance and Carr and Justin Fields yesterday we talked about. But for Kyler, ADP 66, I don't think it's for me. I'd rather hammer home a wide receiver. You could wait it out a round or two and get Ertz or Brady, maybe a Stafford, Lance, those guys, Carr that I talked about. But the suspension to Hopkins really is huge, especially when you consider that the Cardinals were 8-2 with him on the field and 3-4 without him. And he scored 8 touchdowns, but he only averaged 4.2 catches on 6.4 targets last year compared to 10 targets and 7.1 catches in 2021. So not only did we see a drop-off from Hopkins, we saw a drop-off from Kyler Murray as well. So that's it. Is your Arizona stack. What do we got here? Getting baseball player money. He is getting baseball player money. I mean, maybe he could have got that with the A's. I think he was a center fielder, was he not? He was drafted by Oakland. Joshua Frick also says, with Ertz not worried, what's that? With Ertz not worried that they took the best tight end in the draft. Yeah, that was McBride. That was an interesting pick, right? Because they acquired Ertz, and then they locked him up, and then they drafted a tight end, and they still have Max XX Williams on the squad as well, who was starting to carve himself out a little bit of a role. I think he was. There was a couple games where it looked like, I remember talking about him from a fantasy waiver wire standpoint, and you're in a deeper league or you're playing DFS, that maybe this guy could be something for Kyler, especially in the red zone. And then he tore his ACL, I believe, and then that was it for him. And then they acquired Zach Ertz. I'm not overly concerned about Zach Ertz. Joshua, Jake and I had a pretty good convo about him. I don't know if you have the time, if you want to go back and watch that episode from Tuesday, All in Football. We talked about Arizona at length. It was one of the teams that we spun the wheel around, and Jake had him as a top 10 tight end. I have him as a top 10 tight end. I think I have him at 9. Just because I have him as a top 10 tight end doesn't mean I'm interested in drafting him as a top 10 tight end. That's where I think he'll finish ultimately. There was certainly a nice... towards the end of the season, this was the guy that was getting like 7 to 9 targets, 4 or 5 catches, anywhere from 40 to 60 yards. He was a big part of the offense down the stretch. But again, there was no Hopkins, right? So you're not going to get Hopkins for the first few weeks of the season. May take McBride a little bit to get going. They can line him up. He's a mismatch. They can line him out wide. They can line him in the slot. They can move him around a little bit. We could see some 2 tight end sets, certainly with Arizona. They could try to get creative with no Hopkins in the first 6 weeks. So the first 6 weeks, we could see Zach Ertz be just fine. He could be a sell-high candidate. In around that range. Again, I did it for Kyler, so why not? This is an Arizona. This is a complete Arizona team preview here, Tyler. We'll just may break in a little bit and get into the Colts in the next block. But for Zach Ertz, 10 and 9. For me, I don't love that range. I like Schultz. Actually like Schultz a little bit more than Kittle. I wouldn't be shocked if he finished ahead of Waller. The second option in that Dallas offense, Michael Gallup, I do like as well, but could start on the pup list. Tolbert could take some time, and I don't believe in James Washington at all, really. Goddard, a lot of moving pieces there. They bring in A.J. Brown, run first offense. Hawkinson, a ton of moving pieces in Detroit. There's just a lot of pieces in Detroit, so I'm kind of skipping that tier of Hawkinson, Goddard, Ertz, Knox. I think Knox is due for some regression. I don't think he's going to be a touchdown machine again this year. Pat Freiermuth, not totally in. And then I get into some guys I really like, and Cole Kmet, Irv Smith. A little bit later on than that, Gerald Everett, I mentioned, David Njoku. Like, those are some guys. But I'm not totally worried, I guess, to kind of round it out, long-winded, Joshua. I'm not totally worried about Ertz just because they drafted McBride. Long-term, sure. Like, if you're in a dynasty league, you probably sell this guy. If he gets off to a really, really hot start in the first few weeks of the season with no Hopkins, which I expect him to, I expect him to be the second option in the offense for the first 6 weeks with no Hopkins. And that's huge for a tight end to be the number 2 target. Right? We're just hoping at the end of the day that these guys can find the end zone. You find an end zone. If you have a touchdown for the week, you're an automatic top 5 tight end. That's just the way things go at the tight end position after those dogs, right? After those big boys and Kelsey and Pitts and Andrews, you're just hoping your tight end can find the end zone. He's probably going to be a sell-high candidate. We're going to have to break. I got to keep the balance of the show here. I can't have like 35-second segments that are 35 seconds over the show, right? Anthem Sports Entertainment. We're having fun here on a Thursday. We're going to talk about the Colts here next. Keep her locked. welcome back in. Let's start in the AFC South here. It is one of the weaker divisions in the NFL. I understand that. This division is kind of up for grabs, even though the Indianapolis Colts are the favorites. We're going to start with the Colts, and we'll continue talking about other teams. I love so much about this picture. 11's my favorite number. I like Pittman. I like the blue. Well done, George. I think it looks oh so sharp. For the win total, you can get a bunch of different win totals here using our free prop shop over at ftnbets.com. You can get a ton of different win totals here for the Indianapolis Colts to kind of change your odds. I'm not totally into, betting win totals. I'll just be honest with you guys because just so much can happen. I'm more willing to kind of bet on a team to win a division in a parlay or maybe take a shot on them to win a playoff spot. I saw that they were plus 425 to get into the playoffs via a wild card, which will be really tough for them because the AFC is completely stacked, and the AFC West, we could see like 2 or 3 teams in there. So I think it's one team that gets in here into the playoffs from the AFC, and it's probably the team that makes the playoffs. But you're not going to bet this as a single, I don't think, at minus 115 for the Colts to win the division. You can get 8.5 at minus 335. Nobody's doing that. You can get 9.5 at minus 155. I don't think anyone's going to do that either. We can just take 10 at minus 105 over at DraftKings. For them to make the playoffs, they're minus 175. But yeah, BetMGM is offering plus 425 for this team to be a playoff team, but via a wild card. Actually, it's plus 450, so it's changed a little bit. Interesting. Or maybe I just was on the bats last night and thought it was 425. It's 450. Nonetheless, last year, 9-8, so they didn't have that finish that they wanted to have down the stretch. They lost their last 2 games, and of course they lost that one in Jacksonville to the Jaguars, where Carson Wentz just really, really struggled. And Frank Reich, who was with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia, they drafted him. He was well on his way to winning the MVP the year that they won the Super Bowl, and he suffered that ACL injury against the Rams. I think it was like week 14, and then the rest is history. Nick Foles comes in, and they win the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. And then it's crazy that teams have. I'm so hard on Carson Wentz. It's tough, man. Carson Wentz. I think we're not even talking about Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is in Washington now. Tough go for him last year in Indy, but if Frank Reich, took a shot on this guy to bring him in for the year. Clearly felt like he could fix him and that he had a rapport with him before and that they could make it work. It was just a 1-year thing, and it was just such a tough go towards the end. It's certainly an upgrade here at the quarterback position with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan he's better than Carson Wentz. He's been better than Carson Wentz. I know that he's not a spring chicken anymore, but he is a game manager. He's more accurate. He's going to a team that can hold him up. The offensive line has been one of the strengths for the Colts over the past couple years. Remember the years when they had Andrew Luck and they weren't drafting pieces on the offensive line? When they were drafting guys like Philip Dorsett in the first round, they weren't helping Andrew Luck out at all, and the guy had to retire because there was just too many injuries. They've done a good job over the past couple of years. Quentin Nelson, they've done a great job of beefing up the offensive line. So now Matt Ryan goes to a team that couldn't hold him up over the past couple of years with really no weapons inside the offense, and going to a team in Indy that's going to be able to protect him and going to be able to also protect him with a good defense, right? And he's not going to have to throw the ball 40 plus times. He's really just going to have to go, here you go. Here you go. Jonathan Taylor, here you go. Here you go. That's it. Michael Pittman, fine. We'll throw to Michael Pittman. We'll hand it off to Jonathan Taylor. It's really all Carson Wentz had to do last year either, is not turn the ball over. Now, he didn't have a ton of picks, but he had them in key moments. Really key moments and bad moments here. But here's Indy overall. I got some offensive ranks before we get into some of their weapons. So according to Football Outsiders, 13th overall in offense DVOA, 20th in pass DVOA, 2nd in rush DVOA. Of course, they had Jonathan Taylor. And then 149 rushing yards overall, just behind the Philadelphia Eagles. It was 149 per game, 9th in points per game, and right there with the Rams and the Packers. More points per game than the Packers. Like, this should have been a playoff team last year. There's no real excuse for them not to be last season. As good as the Titans were, Joshua, the Colts should have gotten in. They should have got in over the Raiders. They lost that key game to the Raiders as well down the stretch. They should have been a playoff team. There's no excuse. I just think their roster is pretty strong that they should have been. Offensively, apart from Pittman, they have some issues, but defensively, they're great. 8th overall in DVOA, according to Football Outsiders, 17th against the pass, 3rd against the rush. They only allowed 21 points per game, is inside the top 10. Only 109 rushing yards allowed per game as well, inside the top 10. Let's get to some of their weapons, because they certainly do have some appealing weapons here. Of course, you see Jonathan Taylor, RB1, ADP1. I mentioned Trey Turner about how it's the safe pick. He doesn't want number 1 overall. It certainly is the safe pick. He's my number 1 player. I would take him. He's a guy last year that finished as RB1 overall. He had 18 touchdowns, which was number 1 overall. Those were just the rushing touchdowns. He chipped in with 2 receiving touchdowns. He had 40 catches on 51 targets. And again, he's getting a better quarterback here. I think he finishes as RB1 probably again. It's not breaking any news, but we could see some guys that overtake it if CMC stays healthy, if Derrick Henry stays healthy. Joshua's boy Derrick Henry actually had the most fantasy points per game, even from a PPR standpoint, despite only 18 catches and playing 8 games. Derrick Henry averaged 24.2 fantasy points per game. Jonathan Taylor averaged 21.9 fantasy points per game. Eckler at 21. Fournette, CMC, Kamara, Mixon, Harris, Connor, Swift to round out the top 10. I already gave my case really for Taylor. Offensive line is fantastic. You got the first overall pick. I like it. Giddy up, right? No issues at all. Nyheim Hines is kind of interesting to me. This is Taylor's backfield. There's no question about that. But Nyheim Hines is a pretty good pass catcher. And Ryan, has a history of kind of checking down, dumping off. Hines could have a bit of a third down role here. There was at times last year where he had a third down role, even with Taylor having like a workhorse role and a third down role as well at times. So Nyheim Hines, I think, is okay for where he's going, RB 45. I think we brought him up just a couple days ago. He wasn't one of my targets. And I think if you're looking for some upside, certainly could do wonders for you. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell, Mo Alley Cox in there as well. They also drafted, was it 2 tight ends that they drafted last year? Jelani Woods is another one. And I think they brought in Andrew Ogletree as well. I'm not into anybody here on this roster when it comes to tight ends. The disrespect on Paris Campbell, 33 picks after Pierce. Yes and no. I think the biggest difference for me with Campbell as we head into this season compared to last year is that this guy just wasn't getting on the field in any wide receiver 2 sets. He was only getting on the field in wide receiver 3 sets, which they didn't really run a lot of in Indy last year, right? You got the running back there and Taylor, you hand the ball off. You got Pittman, who's a big part of the offense. And last year he was just kind of phased out. T.Y. Hilton's, I don't think he's on the squad. Did he sign recently? It doesn't matter. T.Y. Hilton, when he was on the field last year, it was T.Y. Hilton. So the biggest thing I think for me, again, why I didn't like Campbell at all last year, and it was clearly Pittman for me. I remember there was some combos, this guy versus that guy. Paris Campbell has gotten in his own way over the past couple years with a lot of injuries. He hasn't been able to stay on the field, and they didn't really use him in areas that I wanted them to use him. Like I said, those 3 wide receiver sets or those 2 wide receiver sets. And this year, according to reports out of camp in Indy, that they are using him in that role because they have an opportunity. One, they probably want to really see what they have in this guy. T.Y. Hilton's done. Alec Pierce, young rookie, going to take some time to learn the playbook, etc. So getting in Paris Campbell, a real opportunity to grow inside the offense. I honestly think if I'm choosing between the 2, I'm taking the upside and Pierce as the rookie. I really do believe that way. I'd rather go that way. But there is room for somebody to step up in this offense and be the number 2. Even though it is going to be a run-first offense behind a really good offensive line and 2 good running backs, Matt Ryan is going to throw the ball to somebody else, not named Matt Pittman, Taylor, or Hines. There will be an opportunity for somebody in this offense to be the number 2. So there is value, Tyler, if you want to throw that up one more time for me, buddy. There is value here in one of these guys, and Pierce at wide receiver 69 or Campbell at wide receiver 80. But ultimately, like, Pittman is the alpha. Pittman's a guy that I think could finish top 5 in the NFL in receiving yards. He, as you see, is one of my targets in round 3. Last year, just the 6th Colts pass catcher to break 1,000 yards since 2020. You could say he's in for a breakout season. I think he had it last year. 1,000 yards, 6 TDs, 31% of his team's air yards, 25% target share, 9.59 ADOT, red zone option, finishes wide receiver 17, 14 points in a PPR setting. I got him as wide receiver 13. I like where he's going. If you draft a running back in the first round, if you even draft 2 running backs, I think you could get Michael Pittman as your wide receiver 1. I'd feel better if you use your wide receiver 2. But you could get him as your wide receiver 1, and I think that'd be okay. I think that would be perfectly fine. If I'm projecting Michael Pittman, I think he probably flirts with 1,200 yards. I think he maybe gets a little bit more. He's a contested catcher. He's got great hands, and then he has an upgrade at the quarterback position, a more accurate quarterback. There certainly was a rapport with Wentz and Michael Pittman, but I do believe there's going to be one with Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman as well. That's it for the Colts. I do believe they win the division. I think I got them in around 10 wins. Can we roll through this quickly? Probably not. Like, look at start. Houston, Jacksonville, those are 2 W's. Kansas City, there's a loss. Tennessee, sorry, Joshua Fricker, give them a win. There's 3-1. Lost to Denver. Then they go Jacksonville, Tennessee again. So Tennessee gets one of those wins. They got 4 wins. They got Washington week 8. There's 5 wins. A little bit of a tough stretch. New England, Vegas, Philly, Pitt, Dallas. Maybe they win one of those, and that's just being, kind of optimistic or pessimistic, I suppose. There's 6. They wrap up with Minnesota, the Rams, the Giants, and Houston. The division is just so bad. They're going to get wins. They will win those 2 games against Jacksonville. They will win those 2 games against Houston. Over 10 wins isn't bad considering their division should give them 5 free wins. Joshua and I are on the same page. There's no surprise there. I would take the slight lean to the over, but I do believe that you can get them into a parlay, and we'll see the Colts win the division and play playoff football this season. Darius Leonard is a beast. He's a beast. He's a beast. He's a beast. I love DeForest Buckner as well. They got a lot of pieces defensively. It's a good team. It's a good team. They got themselves a capable quarterback now. We're going to take a break. We're going to look at targets from round 12 of NFFC Drafts here next. Welcome back in. Let's take a look at round 12 NFFC high stakes leagues ADP over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Give you guys a little bit of a feel of where certain players are going here. And yesterday was a little bit of an underwhelming list, but this one I'm very interested in. We got Irv Smith, Cole Kmet. We got 2 tight ends in there. Trevor Lawrence, back-to-back Jags here. James Robinson's he's coming back from the Achilles injury. I don't think he's a really good target. I don't know. I think, he'd even fall a little bit deeper than this, and maybe you can take a shot at him in the 150s, but it could be some time before we really see him. Tim Patrick, Jacoby Myers, Kenneth Gainwell. A lot of people think Gainwell is going to have a breakout campaign. Guys, it's not going to happen. It's going to be Miles Sanders out of the backfield. They started to run the ball a little bit. Actually, they started off the season throwing the ball, and then they ran the ball towards the end of the season. And even though he didn't get any touchdowns, Miles Sanders was still a big part of the offense, and Jalen Hurts is going to call his own number. Kenneth Gainwell is just a little bit of a flyer. We'll be talking about him differently next year, as the Eagles will not bring back Miles Sanders. He's on the last year of his deal. Just run that guy into the ground. Give him some touches that he deserves. He's a really good running back, and maybe we'll see Kenneth Gainwell be something next year, a good buy low in Dynasty, but the Eagles could also draft a running back next year as well. Tyler Algier, I really do like. I think he's a big body. I don't believe in Cordell Patterson. They can move him around. I don't think he's the goal line back there. I think that Tyler Algier could have a role as a goal line back, but ultimately is going to be a very bad offensive team in Atlanta this year. Don't ask me to pronounce it, but I am in on Big O. Excuse me, out of Denver, Khalil Herbert. I think I was going to try to pronounce it, and my throat got scratched up, and I got nervous, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Khalil Herbert in there as Chicago. Mecole Hardman, no thanks. Johan Dotson, I think, is an okay flyer. I think he could certainly be the number 2 option there behind Terry McLaurin. So there's a couple guys here that I like. Tim Patrick, we mentioned him yesterday as like a wide receiver sleeper, and I know this is not breaking really any news, but I do like Patrick. I don't know if you have that board, Tyler. Yes, you do, sir. As we brought this up yesterday, he led the Broncos with 8 end zone targets last year in 2021. That was 8 more than Jerry Jeudy. That's right, Jerry Jeudy had a donut last year. No end zone targets. Of course, the quarterback play is going to be much, much better this year with Russell Wilson in there. But Tim Patrick, I wouldn't be shocked if this guy had a better fantasy season than Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton. Honestly, wouldn't. I think he's a really good wide receiver. He's a big body, 6'4". He could be the red zone option for Russell Wilson. Healthy A-dot there, 25% of his team's air yard, 18% target share. Those are free tools over at FTN Daily, FTNFantasy.com. And then you saw the finish as wide receiver 42. Where he is going, wide receiver 58. So why? Wide receiver 42, why? We've got a better quarterback there. I know Jeudy and Courtland Sutton probably missed a little bit of time. Maybe that's why he finishes there, but he's a really good wide receiver. But my target, of course, is Cole Kmet. And I said this, I tweeted this out, and I've been tweeting this out. Who would you take here? And maybe it is a loaded question. It's all about context. You're not taking Cole Kmet or Irv Smith if you drafted Travis Kelce. Maybe just pass on Travis Kelce and wait it out for Cole Kmet in this range. I think a lot of people are in on Cole Kmet. So I'm not really breaking a lot of news here. You see the note on the right, though. He ranked in the top 12 among tight ends in targets, catches, and yards last season. He only had 10 grabs in his first 5 games last season. This is his 3rd year. He's going to be a little bit more familiar with Justin Fields. It's a new offense. It's going to be a better play caller. He's going to be the second option in this passing game. Allen Robinson didn't do a whole lot, but he was still on the field. And the start of the season was like a little bit of Dalton, a little bit of Fields. He averaged 4 catches per game over his last 8 games of the season. I know it's not a lot, but there were some better games from him. 8 grabs on 11 targets, 3 grabs on 7, 3 on 5, 6 on 9, 4 of 5, 4 of 5. The one problem is he didn't have any touchdowns. That's why he finished last year as tight end 20 and 7.1 fantasy points per game. But those other numbers to me are very important. To finish top 12 among tight ends in targets, catches, and yards, I think that's very telling. He's going to find the end zone this year. There's no Jimmy Graham in his way. Again, another year with Fields, new offensive play caller. He's very skilled. He's explosive after the catch. I'm in on Cole Kmet. He was one of 2 players last year to have 60 catches and not have a touchdown. The other was Laviska Shenault. I am in on Cole Kmet. I think he's a very, very strong target. I don't mind taking him in round 11 just to make sure I get this guy. One more segment for you, believe it or not. We got one baseball play here for you for tonight's Giants and Dodgers game. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back in one final time. So just going to quickly look at the Giants and the Dodgers today. Of course, there's not a lot of action. Head on over to our FTN Network YouTube page. Kyle's got some MLB props courtesy of Prize Picks for you. I actually like the Giants to win this game. I'll probably put like half a unit on them to win overall at plus 135. But I like Carlos Rodon here at over 6.5 strikeouts at minus 130. You can get that over at BetMGM. It's the best price I am seeing right now. DK's got minus 145. FanDuel has 7.5 at plus 122. I'd take the over 6.5 at minus 130. He's striking out 11 batters per nine, 131 punchouts, and 105 innings this season. He's got a 14.1 swinging strike percentage. He's had at least 7 strikeouts in 6 of his past 7 starts. His last start against the Dodgers, he had a gem, 6 scoreless, only give up 2 hits, and he punched out 8 batters in there as well. He's allowed actually 1 run or fewer in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his past 7 starts. He's having a really, really strong campaign. Checks in with a 2.66 ERA. So give me Carlos Rodon and maybe taking a shot here on the Giants on the money line. We'll have a full slate of MLB action tomorrow. We'll dive a little bit deeper and get some other props and picks. Maybe we'll do that ESPYs thing tomorrow. We'll do that tomorrow. Why not? Does anybody really care? Who knows? Have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.